What is going on, everybody? My name is Brendan. This is my good friend Daniel, and welcome to the Jersey Number Runners. Basically, I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. My good friend lives in New Jersey, and
Jersey.
the great state of New Jersey. That's where we met, and we're a couple sports guys. Nothing crazy, just a couple dudes who like sports, and we're gonna dive a little bit into the numbers that we like about sports. Big baseball guys, as you can see from his background, and let my friend introduce himself. So,
Hey guys, how's it going? My name's Dan. I am a baseball fanatic. Grew up in northern New Jersey and I'm a diehard fan of the Atlanta Braves. I grew up on TBS, so I'm one of those generation of fans who grew up on the Superstation and got introduced to the glory days of the 90s Braves with Greg Maddux and Tom Glavine and John Smoltz and Chipper Jones. And I've been a lifelong fan since. As you can see, I'm wearing my Atlanta Braves World Series sweatshirt. Brendan and I were both there, and we saw games 4 and 5 and had the time of our lives. And we're basically here to kind of talk about our love of sports, and not just baseball, football, basketball, hockey, uh, maybe even tennis. But no, we love baseball in particular, and want to provide you guys some more insights and conversation about the game that sometimes maybe is lacking, as well as Brandon will explain, get into the numbers that sometimes get pushed to the side or misunderstood, and how that can basically apply to your life, maybe through fantasy sports or through responsible gambling, um and see if we can give you some stimulation and an edge.
yeah, no, big fantasy guys. Definitely will be a lot of fantasy talk on this channel. But yeah, in terms of allegiances, I'm a Michigan guy, so everything Detroit is up my alley. So Pistons, Tigers, Red Wings, Lions, bleed blue. But I do work for the Carolina Panthers and Charlotte FC here for the Crown. So we got a split fandom going on. Definitely have an appreciation, and it's been really interesting. I mean, definitely a little bit short of a year, but it's coming up here pretty soon to see the insight on how things work. I work on the business side of things, not the football ops or anything like that. So just in terms of like really diving into the numbers, I think that's also part of what, kind of played into this whole idea. When you really see what's going on. I mean, and I think that's one of the things that kind of got us with this whole baseball lockout. Baseball's back. And there was a lot of misinformation that came out about baseball in this whole phase here. So, baseball is going to be stronger than ever. And we're really excited about it. And I think just in general, I mean, share my screen. I think that was probably the first thing that kind of got us going off. I mean, we're talking about revenue for baseball. It's a $10 billion industry here. My good friend, the Atlanta Braves here, made a $568 million profit.
Revenue.
Okay, all right, revenue.
The
There you
profit
go.
was over 100. What you can see over there was
Yeah,
about
yeah.
104 million. The
There you
profit.
go. So baseball is doing just all right. That's the Braves. You can imagine what the New York Yankees pull in, Los Angeles Dodgers. I mean, Houston Astros, if you want to go that route. But yeah, I mean, it's I think that was one of the things that really got us upset is when people are like, "Oh, baseball's dying. It's a dying sport." No, it's not, and it's here to stay. And we're hoping to kind of cover that moving forward here. And I know it starts with the picture of that man right there for my friend. So.
who we don't need to talk too much about, but maybe we will. It's a sour subject right now.
Yeah.
As you guys probably know, right now, today is what, the second day of I guess part 2 of Major League Baseball's off season. Um, as you guys know, the lockout came to an end last night, and we've had a few signings this evening. Carlos Rodon to the Giants, Clayton Kershaw re-ups with the Dodgers, and Frederick Charles Freeman is a free agent. So yeah. Anyway, but regardless, no, baseball is some would argue, but I still say America's pastime. Um, it's becoming more international. Uh, the spotlight that is on Shohei Ohtani and the popularity of the game overseas and in the Asia Pacific, the way it's growing, baseball is going to be having games going forward in Europe, in London, and Paris. Uh, we think that there's a lot of runway, and the facts about the game and where it stands need to be put out there. And look, I'll just say briefly about the lockout. I know a lot of people are sick of it, and just don't want to hear anything about it anymore. We want to talk about the game we love. The reason the players were not happy just signing any old contract was because they knew how much more of the pie was out there. That the amount of money that baseball teams have been making has been going exponentially up. And the percentages with which teams were putting that money back into payroll has been going down relative to what they've been making. So they wanted a deal that reflects baseball's growth. And I think that they got a pretty fair deal, especially aimed at giving money down to the younger players, guys who win the MVP and the Cy Young at the age of 23. Those people deserve not just recognition, but financial recognition. I think any employee would say that if they exceptionally overperform, they're entitled to some kind of financial compensation. So baseball provided that, and now we can get back to the game.
Yeah, I mean, I think all great points. I mean, baseball has gone through a statistical revolution, and I think that it is a twofold street. I think the one thing that really caught the players by surprise is that the owners got smart about it, right? Like, if there's a 34-year-old who has had a phenomenal career, they're not just going to hand that guy a $200 million contract anymore. And, whether or not, his performance can continue, that can be debated. But I'm a closet Tampa Bay Rays fan. I have way before their World Series. Daniel knows it. You can see him rolling his eyes. I mean, I love the way that they go about things. I mean, it's unfortunate that the market they're in and, the cap that they have on their organization in terms of what they can put back into the team. But what that has created, sort of probably born out of Oakland, is a way to, build an organization strategically and a way to evaluate players that has really, leaked into the rest of the league. And I think that was also one of the things that has really contributed to the decline in salaries. I know JD Martinez is one of the players who, granted, he got a $100 million contract over 5 years from the Red Sox, but I know that he wanted a lot more because, I mean, I see what he was able to do in Detroit, and then he got traded to Arizona and just went on a tear, and he was a borderline MVP heading into free agency. So, I mean, he hit 4 home runs in one game. I mean, his entire stock was peaking up, but for whatever reason, the numbers that were underlying did not reflect that. So, for his agent, he wanted, all the money in the world, but he didn't get that really late into free agency. So I think that the way that players were evaluated, I think the one big thing that did not get addressed in this new agreement, which I wish it really would have been, if a player that's rejected a qualifying offer has that draft pick attached to it. I mean, that guy has, at least over the last 5 years, red flags all over the place. I mean, they're not going to get a deal for the most part that they want. I think that the overall free agency numbers that have been impacted by that has definitely, gone down. But I think, to Daniel's point, they did get a lot of things right in this CBA. And I think that we're going to see a lot of, especially the younger players, like you mentioned, get taken care of. And I really am a fan of the bonus pool that was created for players heading into arbitration. I think that was a phenomenal idea that they had. And, just looking forward to, hopefully, those 34-year-old players. I mean, man, they may not got a $200 million contract, but there's a certain place in the game for these guys that have essentially been kind of, taken out of it. I know the shift that's officially dead, right? The shift is gone.
It's officially dead starting next season.
Next season. Okay, so we're gonna have the shift this year.
Correct. We'll have the shift this year, and then the year after, no more. So the Joey Gallas of the world and whatnot will, I was talking to somebody today on the radio down in Georgia, and people were speculating, what is a guy like Freddie Freeman gonna hit now that the shift is being? I mean, he hit 341 2 years ago. I think about a guy like Chipper Jones who hit 364 at the age of 36. Yeah, I could see Freddie Freeman hitting 350 easily in a shiftless world. So I actually, Brendan, you and I would talk about the shift, and how can you tell a team not to, it's like saying to an NFL team, you
Mm-hmm.
can't stack one side or your backfield or whatnot. But uh, baseball is also a entertainment game, and the reality is that it was having an impact on scoring. It was having an impact on action. I mean, in 1968, you guys can see that's the great Bob Gibson over there. He dominated the National League and had a 112 ERA. The next year, they lowered the mound because he was just too damn good.
Mm-hmm.
And Sandy Koufax had been dominating the early 60s. So, for people to say you're messing with the purity of the game, it's not the first time that there have been some kinds of changes. And look, I mean, the shift to me is not even as dramatic as lowering the mound. So I think it's something that a lot of players were looking forward to, hoping for, and because I mean, it was having an impact on their bottom line as well, right? Their finances. You're a 220 hitter, not a 250 hitter. So you know, I think it was an interesting innovation, but it was something that had its moment, and teams can still adjust. They can still move players around, but there's going to be boundaries to the extent that they can do it. So look, the great thing is baseball is an innovative game, and the people who manage it are innovative. I'm sure they'll come up with other defensive strategies and whatnot, but I do think it was something that needed to kind of be put back and mothballed.
Yeah, I mean, I'm 50-50 on it. I mean, I think the reality was like it worked too well.
Yeah.
I think we talk about it a lot here, and like a lot of people's just immediate like caveat to it, especially when it comes to left-handed hitting, is oh, they should adjust their approach and hit to right field. That's your take on it. I know we've had a lot of conversations
Mm-hmm.
about it. But the one thing that we always talk about now is velocity. We've had a lot of conversations about velocity over the last couple of months or years since we've known each other, and I mean, this isn't the 80s, this isn't the 70s. It's a lot easier to take a 90-mile-an-hour fastball on the outer corner and just poke it into left field
Yep.
if you're a left-handed hitter. But when someone's throwing 104, 102 up there now,
It's 98.
98
98.
consistent. I mean, the average velocity in the MLB is probably 96 now at this point. I mean, it's not as easy to do. So, and I mean, if it was as easy to do that, they would have done that at this point.
Yeah.
And I mean, with the way that the on-base revolution has really taken over, I mean, you were just talking about that before we hopped on the show. And batting average is just decline. I mean, it's a game of getting on base and hitting home runs. Hopefully, the elimination of the shifts can kind of bring back some of the purity of the game. So,
Well, look.
you know,
One thing in terms of rule changes, I mean, I'm
yeah, of
not a
course.
fan of enlarging the bases. I think that's
Yeah.
ridiculous. I mean, that was something really stupid. Uh, Base stealing is an art. Not everybody can do it. Not everybody's been able to do it. I think when you start making too many changes, you can all succeed. The great thing about baseball and what distinguishes it from the other major sports is how much numbers and statistical achievements matter, particularly in the regular season. In football, people don't care as much as about yards passed and whatnot. I mean, to a degree, but baseball, I mean, this is a game being played since before the 1900s, and we have numbers that go back to it. Sure, we have different eras, but um, still, the home run record in baseball, that means something. The stolen base record with Ricky Henderson, that means something. Hits record, RBIs, runs scored. I mean, people keep track of these things, and when you start playing too much with it, I do think it dilutes maybe sometimes what's look at Cooper Kupp this year. He in the NFL, they added an extra game, and I think he set like every single receiving record, I believe, Brendan, and
Mm-hmm.
he
Triple
didn't.
crown.
Yeah, he didn't. He felt it was a little bit watered down because of
he gave his props to Megatron, dude. He did.
Yeah, I mean, you're a Detroit guy. I mean, the NFL added another game because of money. Simple as that. Just make more money. Forget who cares about records and whatnot. But the players, it matters to them. And in baseball, it matters to them. In football and baseball, it matters even more. So that is why people talk about. We were talking about the integrity of the 162 game season. I mean, when Roger Maris broke Babe Ruth's single season home run record in 1961, people were basically diminishing that achievement because they said, well, Ruth did it in 154. And they were not, that's why they had an asterisk there. Now, there were certain differences that people talked about. Babe Ruth didn't have to play night games and travel to the West Coast and what other things, maybe like different pitches that he never had to face. But I think there's a point where you want some kind of continuity, and when you start making the bases larger, when you start changing the physical elements of the game like that too much, I do have an issue. So, look, it wasn't a perfect CBA. I get it, the need for a pitch clock. The reports are in the minor leagues that they took off 20 minutes a game by introducing a pitch clock. Look, I'm one of those people that believes that baseball, is the only game without a clock and should be that way. I don't think that if I'm a pitcher, I played pitcher in high school a bit. I have enough to think about. Let me tell you, when I'm throwing a pitch and I've got Freddie Freeman stepping in there against me. So, look, it wasn't a perfect CBA in that regard, but nothing ever is, but we'll see. I mean, who knows? Maybe some of these rules will revert back. I don't know, but it'll sure be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, obviously with any change, I mean, there's going to be, people that are upset. I mean, change is difficult on multiple fronts. I mean, and I think to your point, I mean, I think that baseball really set the tone for other sports for statistics. I mean, I definitely certainly think football is catching up. I certainly think basketball is catching up. I mean, it's like
analytics began with baseball.
It did.
Sabermetrics, analytics, it all fantasy. I mean, baseball set the tone for it, and I'm glad other sports have caught up, because I think in the NFL and the NBA, we look at people different now. We value people differently. Look at Nikola Jokic. The other day, a certain ESPN analyst was praising him, but saying it was like watching a tub of lard jump up and down, because he couldn't jump very high. I mean, no. Nikola Jokic is arguably the best player on the planet right now, and the numbers show that.
I mean, I think that's, Moneyball, that's what it was. He said a lot of people undervalue these guys because of the way they look, not anymore. That's really what it comes down to. And I mean, like, at the end of the day, I think that changes will be made. I think eventually the NBA 3-point line will be moved back. I think that's a change that a lot of people will have an issue with when it happens, but they change these games,
Brendan, think about it. The NBA never had a 3-point line, right? The introduction of the 3-point line was something different. It was something revolutionary, and people had an issue back then. Yeah, now everybody's lethal as soon as you cross half court.
Can't guard
it. You've got Joel Embiid draining threes. So yeah, I mean, even if they move it back a couple of inches, no, the sky isn't going to fall. But I will say, though, getting back to the baseball thing, I mean, if you start physically changing the game too much, you begin to lose that game.
Do we get robo umps? Is that official? Robot umps?
No, not yet. No, okay. No. The players' union rejected that. It's something that may come on in the future. I'm very mixed about it. I'm very mixed about it. There are days out there where, I mean, games get decided by bad umpiring. They really do.
In my opinion, pitch framing is an art, though, as well. I mean,
it's
a tough one. I'm real 50-50 on it. I mean, I honestly, if we did get it, it wouldn't bother me all too much. Like, no, yeah, I wouldn't be like, oh, those poor catchers, like, they have enough to think about, like you said earlier. Like, that's coming at them at 100, it'll be fine. But yeah, baseball, I mean, interesting place, interesting changes that happened. I mean, dominoes will begin to fall in the next couple of days. I mean, free agency is here. I think there's some big names to fall. I think you mentioned Carlos Rodon to the Giants. Interesting fit. I mean, that's probably one of the best places he could have gone for his career, in my opinion. Definitely.
It's a pitcher's ballpark. It's a division with big ballparks. He's got power stuff. I think he'll play well out there. Uh, I mean, I think he was not going to get the kind of contract he was looking for, which is something probably, 3 or 4 years at the very least. But I do believe from what I read, he has an opt-out clause. So
I
if
mean,
he pitches well,
yeah, from an annual basis, I think he did just fine, man.
he
22
did.
mil a
No,
year, he's good,
yeah,
dude.
he did. No, listen, it's a perfect deal for Rodon, and it's a worthwhile risk for the Giants.
Mhm.
I think this is all the Giants do. Good luck to you, but it shores up their pitching rotation. Their staff is set. They've got Alex Cobb, they've got Alex Wood, they've got Desclafani back, and they've got Rodon, and at the top of that rotation is Logan Webb, who I'm sure we'll talk about in fantasy eventually, but he's somebody I like. He's somebody I like.
Yeah, I mean, I talked about it all year last year. I don't know how the Giants were that good. I still think
Everybody had a career year. All their veterans just went off.
Gabe
And
Kapler, I mean, he clearly righted the ship
he
in his
did.
own personal front as well. I mean,
I do think losing
awesome.
Buster Posey is going to hurt, though. I do think the veteran leadership.
Yeah,
He's the rock of that organization. He's the last guy who won all three of those rings. He was there, and not having him there now, I do think. I mean, the good thing is it's a veteran team, right?
I
So
mean,
Brendan Crawford.
yeah, I was gonna say
Yeah,
Belt. I mean, those guys have
yeah,
been there. They've seen
yeah.
a lot
But
of it.
Posey, to me, I mean, he's a Hall of Famer,
Yeah.
and when you lose a Hall of Famer like that, those are shoes to fill. But from a talent perspective, I do like Joey Bart. I think,
yeah, exactly.
yeah, I do think he should be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
He should be interesting.
Yeah, I'm interested to see, how these dominoes start to fall. I mean, there's some big names left on the board. Obviously, starts with Freeman. Trevor Story, where does he go? Carlos Correa. I mean, Carlos Correa to the Cubs. I mean, what are the Cubs doing? I don't know.
The Cubs don't know what they're doing, Brendan.
Let
Let me tell you that the Cubs don't know what they're doing. Jed Hoyer doesn't know what they're doing. The Ricketts are more interested in making money and in bringing gambling into Wrigley Field than they are putting another World Series title on the north side of Chicago. That's what the Ricketts family's interested.
Yeah.
So I'm to me, I'll tell you something. It's the Chicago Cubs are one of the great franchises in American sports. They're not a franchise that has a lot of banners, but they have a unique place in American sports because of that stadium they play in, Wrigley Field. If you've never been out to Wrigley, you go out to Wrigley. It is a cool place. I believe it's one of those landmark spots in the Library of Congress now, or whatever department handles historical American locations. It is a great fan base. It's a great city. They've had great players. When Bill Murray had a great line. He said when the Cubs won the World Series, it was like when Kennedy got elected. That was the kind of euphoria people felt in Chicago, and to see them rip down their team and not have any kind of plan in place, to get the kind of returns that I think also are a little weak because they traded everybody essentially on expiring contracts. Bryant on an expiring contract, Rizzo on an expiring contract, Baez on an expiring contract. You're not getting the bang for your buck. That because they said, hey, let's try it one more time. Let's have one last dance, to invoke that Michael Jordan documentary. They struck out, and their minor league system isn't all that great. They may have money, but if Carlos Correa is the big fish you're bringing in, I think you're making a mistake because they have multiple holes, and I also don't think Correa is, half as good as people think he is, or he thinks he is.
I don't think he's worth $300 million. I mean, he's definitely a very good player. The Cubs, yeah, they remind me of the Detroit Tigers, man. I mean, they're essentially a mirror franchise if Detroit actually won in 2014.
Yeah, they got that one ring.
Torrey Hunter.
And sorry, Brandon, real quick. Partly I'm sure you'll talk about this, but what helped Chicago get over that hump was that bullpen. That year, the Cubs, had they not gotten
Yeah.
Aroldis Chapman, had they not made those particular trades, I don't think they get over that hump. But to get into your point, that's a darn good comparison.
I mean, yeah, the Detroit Tigers, man, you're talking about a rotation with prime Justin Verlander, Max Scherzer. I'm pretty sure they both won back-to-back Cy Youngs in 2013, 2014. Years could be off, but almost positive. I mean, Anuel Sanchez was an ERA leader. Rick Porcello winning 20 games, as a young guy coming up. I mean, you're talking Doug Fister was phenomenal. I mean, that was arguably the best rotation. Man, I would say in this modern era,
at least in Tigers history. At least in Tigers history, for sure. I mean,
but Dave Dombrowski never fixed the bullpen, man. That was the one thing. I mean, they brought in all the talent in the world, but I'm a big bullpen guy. You'll hear that when the fantasy comes around. But yeah, I mean, we got nothing from JD Martinez. I mean, the Justin Verlander trade is completely fizzled out. I mean, we didn't want to offer Max Scherzer what he was worth, and he goes to Washington and becomes one of the greatest pitchers of all time. Yeah. Lives up to every single penny of his contract. I mean, probably one of the greatest free agent signings in terms of
second greatest free agent signing of all time. No question, after Greg Maddux.
There you go. I mean, he's right up there. So yeah, I mean, definitely it hurts to, see a franchise fall, but I mean, I think it's a really good mirror example. And yeah, I'll say it all day. I mean, was the Aroldis Chapman trade a rich trade based on what they gave up? Yeah, but at the end of the day, if you win a championship, nothing really.
I'll tell you what, in the Bronx right now, Gleyber Torres ain't looking that great. So
he's young, man. Give him some time.
He's young, but when you have an opportunity, you go for it. I think the problem with the Cubs, there was definitely some regression with some of those hitters, but I just feel a lot of what let that team down, they never really ensured that the pitching could carry their side of the ball. And other than John Lester, who to me, it was never a true number one. He was a very good number two.
Mm-hmm.
He's one of the best number twos, in the game, or he was. They went out and they traded Eloy Jimenez for Jose Quintana. That's something you don't trade. It was Jose Jimenez and Ronald Acuna Jr. at the time who were the number ones or twos in terms of top prospects in the game.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, I remember Acuna, Jimenez, Victor Robles. That's the kind of prospect Jimenez was, and they traded him for Jose Quintana because they said, "Hey, we need to go back to the postseason and win a ring," and that's the wrong guy. And that's on Epstein, and that's on Hoyer, and yeah, they made some mistakes. I mean, the Jason Hayward signing. I mean, I'm a Braves fan. You guys know I know Jason Hayward as a fan, and I love the guy, but he was not worth that contract that they gave him. 8 years for 100 and I don't know how many, but 100 and too much. 100 and too much. And yeah, the Cubs really shot themselves in the foot. So
I think Jason Hayward, man, that's a shift victim right there. I think he's a shift victim, and I would have loved to see. I think it was unfortunate circumstances when he got hit in the jaw.
I was there.
Yeah.
I was in New York. It happened in Queens.
Mm-hmm.
I was at that game. And I'll tell you, Hayward was he was looking good, and I remember he had to play the rest of the season with an extended batting helmet.
Well, forget that. I mean, the guy lost 20 pounds. He had to drink through a straw for 6 months. I mean, that's a life change. Not only a game changing. I mean, the physical perspective is one thing, but also the mental.
That may be. But I'll say this. I could see why the Braves, if they felt cautious about Hayward, traded him. They had to do a rebuild, and that's something maybe we can talk another day about the Atlanta Braves rebuild and why I think it's the greatest rebuild in baseball history. But they had to trade Hayward at the time, and the man had a great bounce back season with the St. Louis Cardinals, but you could see it in the numbers and you could see it in the swing. He was not ever going to be the kind of prospect people pegged him to be. I remember there were people writing for Fangraphs and all sorts of baseball editorials predicting this is a guy who's going to hit 600 home runs easily. This was the kind of love affair scouts and analysts had about Jason Hayward, but there was a bit of a hitch in his swing, and he couldn't hit lefties. He couldn't hit them before. He couldn't hit them after. And that's, to me, something the Cubs should have seen. But I think the defense was great. He was a Gold Glover in St. Louis, and maybe even in Atlanta. I don't remember, but you know, at the end of the day, it is an offensive game, and I think there was enough there where, and this is again where I don't know what numbers they were looking at, but if you dive deep into the numbers on a guy like Jason Hayward, you could see right-handers he can handle. Left-handers, especially the ball in, can't do anything with it. And
lefty heavy lineup as well. Yeah, Kyle Schwarber, who's essentially plays the same position.
Yeah, I mean that didn't help the Cubs. But anyway, the Cubs, you know, that's a sad story. I think, as people probably know, I mean, they've got a long way to go. And I hope for that fan base and that city. It's a great city. But hey, you know what? Don't disrespect the White Sox. They're half of Chicago, even though I don't know their fan bases, but no, right now they own that town and they deserve to, because that's a hell of a baseball team on the South Side. Hell of a baseball team. Yeah. They're my pick, Brendan, for the World Series, to come out of the American League.
A lot of chips to fall, but I mean, yeah, you could easily make the argument, man. I mean, there's very minimal weaknesses on that team. The bullpen is one of the strongest in the game, arguably the best bullpen in baseball. I mean, I don't know of one that is more stacked than them. I mean, we'll see what happens with Craig Kimbrell. You know, will he stay there? We'll see. I mean, the rotation is just as good. Yeah, Giolito. I mean, I'm a big Michael Kopech fan. I think he's going to really step into some shoes, even in the role that he was last year. Even if they decide to keep him there, hey, 2 to 3 innings at a time, it doesn't matter. That kid is locked down. You know, they have offense, doesn't even need to talk about it. I mean, Jose Abreu, he's fine. He'll be fine until he's 38. You know, like I'm not worried about age or anything like that. I mean, Yohan Moncada, X factor for the team. What Moncada will show up, right? You know?
Will he live up, right? Will he live up? Will he put the Twinkies down and
he was good with the juice ball. That's a different conversation, right? But you know, Tim Anderson, phenomenal, unbelievable. Luis Robert, I think he's going to be healthy this year. I'm a fan of the Panther, Pantera. I mean, you know, Eloy, we just talked about it. So yeah.
Andrew Vaughn, damn good young player.
Oh yeah.
I mean, just
he had his cup of coffee last year. We'll see what he can do. You know.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I think easily top 3 team in baseball, probably. You know, we'll see. Like I said, a lot of chips to fall, but can't make an argument for many teams that are more complete than the Chicago White Sox.
Yeah, for them, it's going to be about execution. They you know, you could see the lights. Maybe the lights were a little too bright for them in the postseason. I do think having a full year of playing together and being healthy, and I think, you know, they have Tony La Russa. I mean, I know there are a lot of opinions about him, but the guy's been there a lot. He's won a lot. I do think he's a good manager for them. I haven't heard a bad word come out of Chicago about him. Many of the players, there was a lot of talk about a clash of cultures and generations, but no, I mean, Tim Anderson's the heart and soul of that team, and if he's given Tony La Russa, you know, his vote of confidence, he's got my vote of confidence then. You know,
Tim Anderson's the real deal, man. That's a dude right there.
So if he's happy with Tony, then I think I'd be happy with Tony if I was a White Sox fan. And look, they just got to get over that hump. They got to get out of that first round. And I think, you know, a lot of it's going to fall on Lucas Giolito's shoulders. It's his time to develop.
I know he's your guy.
Yeah, I'm a fan of him, folks. You know, he pitched with my boy Max Fried in high school. They were rotation mates at Harvard Westlake High in Los Angeles. Well, right? Jack Flaherty, he was a year behind them. He was on that team. Yeah, right. What a rotation, right? What a team. So yeah, but I think it's Giolito's time to step up and live up to his billing as a number 1 prospect, as a top 10 pick. You know, he's somebody who's had Tommy John. He's come back from days? Yeah, who hasn't, right? But he's somebody who's struggled and found himself at the major league level. And now I just think it's, you know, a lot of these pitchers, you know, last year was a bit of a weird year because you saw massive innings jump. and you saw pitchers run out of gas a little bit.
Sticky stuff. Don't
Well,
forget to mention
there
that.
were both those elements. Sticky stuff. You spoke
Sticky
a lot
stuff
about
was
that.
real, man. That's a real thing. Joe Musgrove was a perfect example of that. Was never the same. Never the same
I agree.
pitcher after
His
the sticky
numbers
stuff.
just fell off a cliff. You know, one way you can see it is that pitchers could not put hitters away to the same degree. You could see that Musgrove, and you know, for Garrett Cole, maybe there was an element of injury. I know there was he hurt his calf or his hamstring at the end of the year, but even before that, you could just see that strikeout pitch was not there for a lot of these pitchers.
I mean, it's everything, man.
You know,
velocity, spin rate,
losing innings.
velocity. Yeah, absolutely, dude. I mean,
so
we'll see. I don't know if they ever did come up with a replacement substance. I know there was a lot of talk about that.
They said they were working on it. I don't know. That's a great question. You're right. I don't know. That's something to look up. I'll be curious. But
yeah,
but no, this is going to be a much, you know, this is going to feel like a real season. You know, pitchers aren't going to be tired coming off a shortened season where they're having a significant innings gap. I hope this year you're going to see kind of the return of the starting pitcher. That's my big hope for. I know the game's changed and the game's shifted, but I just think, and we'll talk about this when we get into fantasy baseball, but I just feel like there are a lot of really good young starting pitchers out there that I hope teams can take the leash off a little bit and allow to dominate the game. Because to me, you know, baseball begins and ends with the guy on the mound. And while I think you can win with a bullpen approach, the Atlanta Braves certainly showed that. You're pressing your luck if you do it too much, because at the same time we were there, we saw Kyle Wright come in relief in Game 4, I believe, of Dylan Lee, who couldn't get out of the first inning, and Kyle Wright bailed out their butts. And in Game 5, they had to bullpen it again. I don't remember, Brendan, who started Game 5 of the World Series. I'm trying to think who it was. AJ Minter? Was it AJ Minter?
I think so, yeah.
It may have been Minter. But, you know, it's not a sustainable model. And I think that, you know, it's been one of the rips on baseball, but I think baseball has kind of been their own worst enemy in that, in coddling pitchers and thinking that, you know, they can't go past certain innings, or they can't go past certain pitch counts. I do think throwing as hard doesn't help, but you know what? Yeah. You don't need to throw 98 miles an hour every pitch to get hitters out. The name of the game for pitching is location and changing speeds, and then velocity. So, you know, we'll see. I'm a bit of an old school guy.
I was going to say, yeah, we differ in that opinion. I mean, I just think in general, the way that the training is set up nowadays, the amount of power output per pitch that these guys have to go through. I mean, when you look at a guy like Aroldis Chapman, it's built in that he's going to break down at some point of the season. I mean, it's just built in. I mean, they're starting pitchers. I mean, look at DeGrom.
Totally.
You can't throw DeGrom out there for 8 innings at a time. It just doesn't make sense.
Not throwing 101 miles an hour. You can't do it. Not throwing 101.
Yeah, I mean, that's the best interest of the franchise, and I think that's how they view a lot of these kids. Because I mean, dude, the reality is no one's throwing 90 anymore. You're not. Very few pitchers are surviving at 90 to 92. It's not the way the game is played. I mean, it's not the way the training's set up. I think that's been one of the great equalizers of sports is science. I think that everybody now, and I think that to your point earlier, I think it will be interesting to see. I do think this season will be a little bit more regular. I'm not as concerned about a shortened spring training. I know that that's probably something that some people will have some concerns about, but the reality is, man, these guys are training well throughout the offseason. You know,
I agree.
There's still enough of a spring training window where, you know, these guys stay in shape. It's not like, you know, 1920 where, hey, baseball's starting up. No, these guys are around the clock athletes, 365 days. I mean, nutritionists, everything's dialed in. So I think that, you know, the bullpen model can work, but the reality is I'll give you that you need to have at least 2 or 3 starting pitchers that are going to give you some serious innings.
You will burn out your bullpen.
You won't win a championship. You could win games with the bullpen, but you won't win a championship. That's just the bottom line.
Yeah, I mean,
you need to have at least 1 or 2 dudes up there, you know.
You got to have some kind of, like, your Tigers. You know, one can say, yeah, it was the bullpen that let him down, and I agree.
It
but
was.
it was the rotation that they rode to get there. Because, like you said, it was one of the best ever put together. Maybe it wasn't everybody's complete, career year. That everybody wasn't at their best. Scherzer was younger than Verlander.
2014, you can make the argument, dude. It was
Yeah,
incredible.
no, it
Like,
was. No question about it. No question about it. But if you just look at it from a talent perspective, no doubt, the talent that those arms represented, they weren't all at the same place in their careers, but the talent was overwhelming. No doubt about it. And the Tigers rode that. They just didn't finish the job. With that bullpen, you can't have two. It's like having a tripod and saying, hey, one leg, we're just gonna make out of pixie dust and pretend like it's gonna hold up that chair. No, it is a triangle. You got to have three sides. You may have two that are longer than others, right? A bit stronger than others. You cannot go into battle without one of those legs, and the Tigers did that. And I just think if baseball teams think like the Tampa Bay Rays, they can go into a season and they can go into a postseason with no rotation and just rely on that sexy bullpen of theirs. It's not going to work. Now, not criticizing the Rays though.
It almost did.
maybe, but then that's a separate question.
All the way there.
That's a separate question to Kevin Cash pulling Blake Snell but the point is, like last year, it wasn't their fault. Tyler Glasnow had Tommy John. Had Tyler Glasnow been healthy, I would have loved to have seen what would have happened against the Red Sox. I do. That would have been interesting.
I can't give you a name, but they're going to have some kids coming up too. I mean,
sure. The question is
incredible.
Question is, how many innings those kids get.
Yeah, Shane McClanahan is a perfect example of that. That's a good name. I mean,
he's a stud. He's a stud. McClanahan is a stud.
101 from the left side, man, incredible.
No, he's amazing. He is amazing. But no, I think. Look, I think baseball is at a very interesting place right now. I think I was listening to MLB the other day and Tom Perducci, and he said, we may be at the place of greatest concentration of talent in the game's young talent in the game's history. And you know what? I mean, I'm somebody I consider myself a baseball historian. I the game is rich and unlike any other in that. I think he's right. This you look at the late 50s and early 60s, the headliners of that era, that golden era, right? That era where Bob Costas grew up and fell in love with the game. Your headliners were Mickey Mantle and Willie Mays and Hank Aaron and Roberto Clemente, and they kind of stood head and shoulders above the rest of the league. You can't narrow it down to four names right now. It's not that thin at the top. There's so much overwhelming talent, and on both sides, on the mound and at the plate, it's scary, and it's truly something to be celebrated. And I think that's part of the reason for the popularity is that so many teams have one or two stars who just make you watch and say, what are they going to do today?
We talk about it in the NBA. I mean, I think, same thing there. I mean, that's one of the big things. I mean, every single NBA team, for the most part, I mean, there's a couple outliers that are in deep rebuilds or, either dysfunctional for one, or they don't have a strategy, right? Like the OKC Thunder, I mean, even then you can make an argument. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, I mean, that guy's incredible. But for the most part, I would say 25 NBA teams have multiple people you can point to and be like, dude, that guy can carry, a franchise. Like if you put the right pieces around him, like he can do something special. I mean, yeah, I think it just goes back to, the scientific revolution. These guys are all almost on an equal playing field in terms of athleticism. I mean, there's a couple outliers in terms of genetics and stuff like that. But yeah, I think definitely deeper on the hitting side for baseball. I think, that's a conversation we go back and forth on, right? I mean, I think that there are certain pitchers who are just absolutely dominant, but I do think it's more plentiful on the hitting side.
I agree. No doubt. It's listen. I think you and I talk about this a lot, right? The rise of velocity and batting average. Batting average is just plummeting and strikeout rates just going through the roof. the ability though for one person, right, to do that overwhelmingly is far less than an elite level, the abundance of elite level hitters, right? It's a concentration of different pitchers who will produce these abysmal offensive numbers for a lot of the league. And then of course you've got these, just mind-blowing offensive hitters for like, it just doesn't matter, right? Or they can strike out 150 times, they're still going to hit 40 home runs with, a 280 average or greater, and the velocity just isn't a thing. But for the pitchers, I mean, to me, I feel like hitters have more information. I've always felt from a scouting perspective, pitchers used to have an advantage on hitters, but now with video, I feel like hitters they've kind of evened that. They really have a better idea of what pitchers are throwing and what they're throwing, when they're throwing it. And you can see hitters will go into a dugout after getting an out, sometimes even after getting a hit, and they're looking at an iPad and they're seeing, what did I just do? How did that guy get me out? What did I do wrong there? Or what did he do right? And that's something,
I mean, Javier Baez mentioned it. I mean, he slumped. I mean, he was up for, I think he got a top 5 MVP vote one year, a couple of years back. And then,
he did. He finished second.
Astros got busted. They took out live in-game video adjustments. A couple of guys fell off a cliff. You're absolutely right. That was, I totally agree with you 100%.
So I just think, to me, the few pitchers who do it can go consistently throughout a season and win, and be reliable. It makes it all the more impressive, because I do believe this is a golden age, like you were saying, of hitters, more so than pitchers. And partly that is because of the way the game's changed. But at the same time, I mean, look, what Jacob deGrom did last year, even though it was for a brief shining moment.
Yeah, there's a couple special pitches.
It's just hard. It is harder. It's harder. I do think the era of the greats of Koufax and Gibson, I don't think you're gonna partly because of the way the game is constructed and whether they'll let pitchers pitch. I don't think you're gonna just see that kind of level of dom. You're not gonna see somebody go out there like Bob Gibson and have a 112 ERA, over a full season, or Sandy Koufax. It's just not. It's probably not going to happen.
Time will tell. Time is up on us. We got about 30 seconds here, but baseball's in a good spot. I mean, this was really no other way to just dive into it. I mean, I'm sure you guys got a feel for our opinions at this point, and we're hoping to bring you this maybe 2-3 times a week. We'll see where it goes. But if you tuned in,
we'll be back at it. We just here to chat ball, give you some perspective and some insights, hopefully that you find stimulating. And like we said earlier, we're going to get into fantasy sports, we're going to get into responsible gambling, to be honest, and hopefully just be worth your time.
Appreciate you guys, and we'll see you next time.